network security. Nowadays, hackers are highly skilled programmers who understood the details of computer communication and how to exploit the vulnerabilities. Now, vulnerabilities means the weaknesses we have, and when we use the weaknesses, it is called exploiting. Today, almost anyone can become a hacker by downloading tools from the internet. So these complicated attack tools and generally open networks have generated an increased need for the network security and dynamic security policies. And the easiest way to protect the network from an outside attack is to close it off completely from the outside world. A closed network provides connectivity only to trusted known parties and sites. A closed network does not allow a connection to a public network, and because they have no internet connectivity, network design is this way in this way can be considered safe from internet attacks. And however, internet threats still exist, and there is an estimate that 60 to 80% of network misuse comes from inside the enterprise where the misuse has taken place. And with the development of large open networks, security threats have increased significantly in the past 20 years. Hackers have discovered more network vulnerabilities, and because you can now download applications that requires little or no hacking knowledge to implement application intended for troubleshooting and maintaining and optimizing network can, and in the wrong hands, be used maliciously and pose severe threats. So nowadays, we can get the tools which we can use to do some harm to the network, and we can find it very easily. You don't have to have a knowledge for the hacking. Even you can do some attacks also. You can download these tools, you can use these tools are easy to use. Now most of the tools hackers use, or some script kiddies we can say, those don't have much knowledge for attacking, and they just use some tools to do hacking attack or something. They are called script kiddies. So what these most of the tools are actually designed for troubleshooting the network and optimizing the network for administrator. So they use these tools, they use hackers, and these other guys use these tools, and anyone can use this tool to attack the networks also, to check the vulnerabilities, to get the openness of the network. And for securing it, mostly we should do what? Just close the network from outside. That means nobody should connect from internet. We should only allow only the network which we trust, and we don't allow those networks which we don't trust. That is the case, but still attacks or some problems comes within our network. Some of the problems are mostly related to misconfigurations. If we have not configured our network security properly, then anybody can use, and sometimes our internal users can do these problems. Now the factors that are crucial in the networks are: first is vulnerability. These are the weaknesses that we may have in a network. So vulnerabilities means weaknesses that we could have in our network, and they may be as a result of the technology in use and the configuration in our devices, or poor or weak security policies. So in our network we need to plan for security carefully and consider these factors. A comprehensive security policy would be crucial in ensuring that data in our network is not accessed due to weak security on our devices. So basically vulnerability, when we say, it is related to the weakness we have in our network. Either it is configuration problem or some technology problem also. Then the other thing is called threat. Threats in a network security: anyone who has a skill and the interest to manipulate any of the vulnerability is known as a threat. And these individuals or groups may be motivated by many factors such as money, power, and thrill seeking among others, and whatever the motive may be, threats to network security pose a major challenge for administrators, since they may access information that is sensitive or even cripple the network. So threat means the person or the group which can do what hacking, and they are threat to our network securities. And what they do attacks. That attacks are what? These are the methods that are used by the threats to access the network, and there are a number of attacks that can be used to access our network, and they may be aimed at the network infrastructure. The methods such as dumpster diving or aimed at user using methods such as social engineering. These are some kind of methods we have. Like, we have lots of different methods, like offline method, online method, and most powerful method in among those methods are this social engineering method. Social engineering is related to online and offline both, and this is what very harmful attack we have. So securing the network. Now for the security network, there are many security issues in the network and various methods used by attacker to access network as and have grave and far reaching effects. So some of the protection methods we will look at includes: first, physical security methods. This is very important to secure our network physically. Then to have a passwords which is not easily be recovered or cracked. Then we have other methods called Radius server. We can use TSCACS plus server. Both Radius and this TSCACS plus server are do the same job almost. Then we have SSH, and also we have port security. So these are some methods we have for securing our networks. So first, physical security. Physical security is very important. These physical threats to network devices are a major issue, and physical attacks may cripple an enterprise's productivity due to outage of network services. The four classes of physical threats are: these are the four classes. First, hardware threats. It damages the network infrastructure such as servers, routers, and switches. So physically somebody do that damage. Then environmental threats. Environmental threats, like these are the threats that are brought about by storing the network equipment in unsuitable places. The hardware may be subjected to extreme temperatures or extreme humidity. These devices like servers or routers, they need to be very cool because they run every time, like they run regularly. So we need to be cool them, and we don't have to we should not put them the place where you have humidity can make a problem. So these are some environmental threats we have. Then we have electrical faults. These equipments, the equipments that is used in our network relies on electricity to work, and such as any sudden change in the electrical power supplied to the network device is a major threat. So sometime we have suddenly change in the power supply, power goes down, up quickly, surges, so we can have a problem in our devices, they can fail. Then we have maintenance threats. From time to time we may need to run maintenance checks on our network devices, and the use of untrained technicians can pose a major threat to the network devices if they don't do the proper maintenance. So some of the physical threats may be almost impossible to guard against. For example, we may not be able to predict an earthquake. However, we can effectively mitigate the threats to our network hardware by following the guidelines. So these kind of like earthquake, we can't predict it properly. So we should have do what? We should have to do the effective mitigating things. Like we have to follow the guidelines. We have to properly mitigate the problem by using some guidelines before happening these things. What are these things? What are the guidelines we have? Hardware threat mitigation we have like the location used for storing network equipment, as well the wiring closet should only be accessed by the authorized personnel. All the entrance should be secured, and monitoring should be implemented by using CCTV cameras. That means we have to first secure our hardware by only authorizing the person who can access the hardware directly, and also we can put a CCTV cameras to secure or monitor these devices, who is coming and who is going and who is monitoring, who is editing, who is touching these devices. Then for environmental threat, we should control the mitigate the environmental factors. The humidity, temperature, and the other environmental factors should be monitored. The network control room should ideally be in a room where the condition can be controlled effectively. So we should have devices in the room where we can control the environment. We can control the humidity, we can control the heat, we should control it. So we should put, so almost we will see wherever we see the network devices are kept, they must be in cool place, or the room where it is having a controlled AC system. Now, electrical threat mitigation. So how to mitigate the electrical threats? The electrical threats may be mitigated by using the UPS system, so that the networking device don't draw their power directly from the mains. And there should be backup systems such as generators and inverters, so as to maintain network connectivity in case of power outage. So we should have these generator, we should have the UPS systems, so that we can, our system should not go directly down or something, so we can handle the power surges. Then maintenance threat. So mitigating the maintenance threat, we should be mitigated by using the well-trained personnel. All the cables should be well labeled, so that we should know which cable is coming and going from which side. Maintenance log should be maintained, and there should be availability of spare parts that are critical to maintaining the connectivity. So these are some hardware, these are some physical threats we have, and how to mitigate those threats. So these are some methods which we can use to mitigate those threats. Next is password. Now we can limit access to the router and switches and console line, the telnet lines, by assigning the password to it. And password should be limited to administrators only, and they should not be written down and should be changed regularly. A good password should contain a variety of characters. Use of encrypted password is also better than password that are being stored in the plain text. So for securing our network devices, we should protect them by using the console password, by using the line password, telnet password. Even we should use SSH in place of telnet, that is also secure. Then the password we should use, it should be limited to administrators only, and we should not write those password anywhere. When we write some password in some papers, then what happened? When we lost those papers, so anyone who got those papers, they can do what? They can use those passwords. Then we should use the secure password instead of the plain text password, as we can do what we have seen it in router when we configure the enable password. So instead of using the normal enable password, we should use enable secret password, which is secure and not plain text. And password must be a big password. It is not like a normal regular dictionary word we should use. We should use a big password, which is not like a simple ABC or ABC at 1 2 3. These are most common passwords, like people use 1 2 3 4 ABC 1 2 3 4, like this. We should use the password like mixed with the letters, characters, and special characters, numbers, and it should be more than 8 characters. So these are some things which we can use to secure our password and to secure our devices. We should use password. Now the next thing is what? Device security using AAA with Radius and TACACS+. Now the iOS local AAA allows the router into the full functional AAA server. AAA is what? It is the authentication, authorization, and it is also called accounting. This is why it is called AAA. So this AAA server which do authentication, authorization, and accounting. that is called AAA server, and allowing not simply the local authentication of the remote VPN's users and also local authorization for the protocols such as PPP or IKE. So access control is a way to control who is allowed access to a network server and which service is allowed to use once they access. So we can use normal direct authentication. Instead of that, we can use the AAA server. AAA server, we can use this Radius server, or even we can use TACAS plus server for as a AAA server. Now what it do actually, it do the authentication for the devices, and it do it by centralized authentication. Like for example, suppose if I want to log into a server, if I want to access a router through telnet, so what I can do, I can give a username and password, and then I can directly access the router, and router will authenticate me and I will log in into the router. But when you have a Radius server or this AAA server, then what happens? Router will not authenticate me. It will be authenticated by the AAA server. So when I try to log into the server, it will send the request to AAA server. Either it is Radius or this TACAS server. It will authenticate me, and then I can log into the server. So our informations are not stored in router. Our username, password will not be stored into the router or switch or any other device. We can use it for VPN also. We can use for the router, Wi-Fi, wireless network authentication also. So we can use this AAA server for centralized authentication. So why it is called AAA? It uses authentication, authorization, and accounting. What is authentication? It offers the ways of identifying users such as password and login dialog, and response and challenges, messaging support, and based on a security protocol that you select, encryption. Next, authorization. Authorization, it provides the way for remote access control such as authorization for every service or one-time authorization per user account, list, and a profile. Support of telnet, ARA, IPX, and IP, and user group support. Then accounting, it provides the way for collecting as well as sending the security information used for the auditing, reporting, and billing, including start and stop times. The user identifies number of bytes, number of packets, and executed commands. So it can store all those informations also. That is why it is called AAA server. So it do authentication, authorization, and accounting. Now the AAA will increase the flexibility as well as control of the access configuration and multiple backup system, scalability and standardized authentication ways such as Radius and TACAS plus server. Now first, Radius server. Radius server means remote authentication dial-in user service. In short, Radius. It is a networking protocol that provides centralized authentication, authorization, and accounting. It is AAA. Management for user who connect and use a network services. So whoever want to connect network services and use network devices through services, then they should be authenticated and authorized and accounting by the centralized server, which we called it Radius server, which based on the Radius protocol. Now Radius was developed by Livingston Enterprises in company in 1991 as an access server authentication and accounting protocol, and later brought into the Internet Engineering Task Force, that is IETF standards. And Radius is a client server protocol, so that runs in the application layer and can use either TCP or UDP as a transport. Network access servers, the gateways that control access to a network, usually contains a Radius client and component that communicate with the Radius server. So the Radius server is usually a background process running on a Unix or a Microsoft Windows server. So Radius server means what? It is what normal server. It is like a Unix server, Linux, or Microsoft server where we can configure the Radius server. and we can use it as a Radius server for authenticating our network services centralizedly. Now it works as a client server environment, so server will be the Radius server and client. Now client will be the device or the service which this Radius server is providing the authentication. For example, we have a router and that router needs to be authenticated by need to give the telnet access to normal users. Now that router and the service telnet is the client for the Radius server, not the users. Users will not be as a client. The server, the service and the device, they will act as a client for Radius server. So the authentication process has the 3 stages. The user requested to provide a valid username and password. A Radius server access request message and username and encrypted password is sent to the Radius server. Now requesting authorization to grant access via Radius protocol. Then the Radius server replies with one of the following. So once the client has obtained such information, it may choose to authenticate using Radius. Now to do so, the client creates an access request containing such attributes as the username, the user's password, the ID of the client and the port ID which the user is accessing. So when a password is present, it is hidden using the method based on the RSA message digest algorithm, that is MD5. Same as this TCACS plus do. It is called Terminal Access Control System Plus. This is a protocol developed by Cisco and released as an open standard beginning in 1993, and although derived from TACACS plus is separate protocol that handles authentication, authorization and accounting services. Now this TACACS plus and other flexible AAA protocols have largely replaced with procedures. So Radius encrypts only the user password as it travels from the Radius client to Radius server. All other information such as the user name, authorization, accounting are transmitted in clear text. Therefore, it is vulnerable to different type of attacks. This TACACS plus encrypts all the information mentioned above and therefore does not have vulnerability present in Radius protocol. That is the only difference between that Radius and TACACS plus. So for example, this is our Radius server here. Now what this Radius server has, it has an information about the client, that who is the client. Now in this case I will say this is my client. Client is my this router. So it is having a information about the client and who can access this client. So username and password information and what services we have on the router. So if anybody wants to access those services, it will be authenticated, authorized and accounting by this Radius server. Suppose we say like telnet, we are talking about telnet now. There is a telnet configure on server router, this router, and we want to access the router through telnet from here and from here. These are the client machines and these are the users they have. So what we'll do first, we will add these username and password for those users into Radius server, and then we will add the client information like this router information like the name of the router, IP of the router and share secret of the router. Now share secret, that means it's a normal password, we can say. We have a normal password that will act as a key for the communication between router and our Radius server, and the same configuration we will configure on the router, and we will create a same password key on router also. Now what happened when this user try to log in with telnet and try to access the router here? So first the request will go to router. Now router will do what? It knows that I have to authenticate from the Radius server. So first it will give the reply that I want the authentication like this. I want the authentication like this, like I want to have an authentication of Radius server, and in that I need username, then I need password. So you have to provide username and password, and also which encryption or hashing algorithm we have to use to secure the password. So it will give the information about that. Then here in this machine you will get the option to type username and password. Now you will type username and password here and you will press enter. Now this information will be sent to router. Now router will do what? It will not authenticate here. It will send this information to the router, to this Radius server. Now when it sends the information to Radius server, it will hash that information by using this, encrypt that information by using this shared key. The same key this router has, the same key this server also has. So it encrypts that information and then it sends it to the Radius server. Now Radius server will open it with its own key, and then it will check the username and password. It has an information about the username and password, and it will try to manage a map. If the username is right and the password is right, then it will say here the router that you can allow this user. You can allow this user, and then what? The router will say and give the access to this machine, and then here you will see the terminal of your router, and then you can do what you want to do. Now Radius will do only authenticate and secure the password communication or authentication process, but after that other things like login and accounting things, it will not secure that information. But the TACAS plus do what? It secures those other informations also, but do the same job. They do the same job, but this Radius server, apart from the Radius server, the TACAS plus server is more secure and have more secure feature than the normal Radius server. So this is how this Radius server process works. Now how we can configure it? So I'm going to configure it in our packet tracer, and I'm going to use the same design here where we have these two clients and we have a router here. So we will configure it for the telnet to router, and I will use one server here. So in our packet tracer we have a router, or we have a server machine also where we can configure different services, and that among that services we have these AAA server services also. So first I'm going to create the design here like this, and after configuring this design, then I have to configure these commands on router so that it will allow, or it will go for the Radius server authentication. Let me show you this configuration first. So for configuring the Radius authentication, first I will go for one router here. So this is my router. Now I'm using one switch to connect two devices here. So these are two PCs I have, and in this and devices we have server machine also. So I'm going to use this server machine as a Radius server. Now here if you click on this server and you will go to services, so you have here AAA services, and when you click on it, so by default it is off. If you can see here, it is off. You can enable this and you can use it for Radius. You see here server type, is it Radius, or you can use it for TACACS server, and let's try. I'll go with the Radius. Both are same, they will do same job, and you can see the configurations are same, only you can change the type from here. So first I will do connect these routers and devices, and I will configure the IP first. So I'm going to connect them. Now first I will assign IP addresses. So I have configured the IP addresses. So this is our router 1. I have named it as a router 1. Then it has two interfaces. From one interface it is connected to this server, Radius server. We configure it, and from the other interface it is connected to these two clients with the 10.1 IP at 10.2 and 10.00 the IP address. Now first I will configure this Radius server. So for that I will go to Radius server and I will go to services here. Now remember, this Radius server is of the Windows machine, or even it can be a Linux machine, and it is configured by the system administrator. So it is the job of system administrators to configure this Radius server for us. We are the network administrators. Our job is to configure the router and switches and manage the network things. So this configuration of this Radius server on Windows or Linux machine, it's a different configuration. Here we can do it in packet. We can do it in a packet tracer in easy way. But in the server, like in Windows machine or even a Linux machine, it's a big configuration to configure this Radius server and all that. Now I'm going to do what? I'm going to enable the service from here. Now first I have to mention the client name. Now in this case, this is the Radius server, so the client will be our router. Because it is providing the authentication service for this router. So this is our router, and router is the client here. So I will give the name of the router here, router 1. Now what is the client IP for the router? So it is 20.0.0.1. As we can see in the design, it is 20.0.0.1 from where our Radius server is connected. Now this is where we can have a share secret. Now this share secret will be same in this Radius server also, and also in our router when we configure the router. So we will mention the same share secret which will be used to authenticate, to secure the connection from router and this Radius server. And let me give you this. What I will give here, ABC 123. So this will be my secret, shared secret. We should use the big complex secret here. I'm using simple one. Now here, after doing all this, and remember this is the default port for the Radius server, or even this TSCA Plus server. So this is the port where this server and the client, that means our router, will do the communication. With this share secret, they will secure the communication. So after configuring all this, I will press add. So this information is now added. That means our client information is added here. So we have added one client in our Radius server. Now I have to provide the user authentication. So here in down, I will have to provide the user information, usernames. So I will go for one user 1, and the password will be ABC, and I have added this here. And same as we can add multiple users. I'm going to add one more user here. Password will be ABC. So I have added two users here, and that is what we can configure here on Radius server. So Radius server configuration is done. So I will not do anything here. Now I have to configure this router to authenticate from Radius server, and that we can do by these commands. So the first command is AAA new model. It will enable the AAA server authentication here. Then we will mention the Radius server host. Then we mention the server IP here, that this is our Radius server where we can do the authentication. Then we will mention the key that the key which is the shared secret we added there in this Radius server configuration. That is, in our case it is ABC123. So same we will add here. So the router and the Radius server will know the same share secret. Then here we configure AAA authentication login default group Radius local, so that it will provide the authentication for the local users. So whoever accessing this server from locally, they will get the accessing this router locally, their authentication will go to this Radius server. So let's do this configuration first, and that we will do on this router. So I select the router here, and I will go to the configuration first, AAA, and we have option for this new model. It is to enable the new access control. So I will give command new model. Now I will give command Radius server. Now here I have to mention host and key. So the host and then the IP address of the host. So in our case the IP address for the Radius server is 20.0.0.2. Then we have to mention the key, and also we can change the port. Now port is by default this port, which is also set on the router server. So if we have changed the port on server, then we can change it from here also. But I am using the default port, so I am not going to change the default port. I am going to change the key. So the key I have added there is ABC123, and now I have to configure AAA authentication for the login and default, and this is for group for the users server group. So group of this Radius server. So I'm asking the server, I'm asking the router that if any authentication for the local means user use the local username authentication. So any local username authentication, it will go for the Radius server. And I will press enter here. Now we have configured the server, our router, to use the Radius server. Now we have configured our router to use the Radius server. Now we have to configure the VTY interface for login. Now VTY interface for the remote login. So if you want to access the router remotely, then we have to enable the VTY, line VTY, and we have to enable by the using the password or using this command called login authentication default. So it is going for the authentication and using the default as a Radius server. We have configured here a AAA authentication login default, and that is what we are also saying here, to use that default login. So what we'll do here, we will configure the remote login line console line VTY for remote login or remote accessing. So now again I am on the router. Now I will give command line VTY first, 0 to 4 or whatever 0 to 15 terminal lines we want to apply. We go there, then we give a command for login authentication, and we want to use as a default. So default means authenticate using AAA default list. That is what we have already configured in router default Radius server. So I'll go for default. So now I have configured the server, our router, to use the Radius server, and also I have configured the Radius server for authenticating this router. And that's everything we have configured here. We can see the command, we can see the configuration by using show running config command. We have used this module, we have used the authentication for the default, and we have configured the Radius server, and for line we have configured this. Now we will try to access it from the client machine. Now from any of this client I want to access the router. So what I will do, I will go to this client PC, command prompt, and I want to use it telnet here and want to access it from telnet. So I'll give command telnet, and then I will use the router IP 10.1. Now you see what happened when I press enter. It is asking the user access verification. It is asking the username first. The username which is we have configured on the Radius server. The username I have configured is user1. There it is asking the password. So the password I have configured ABC. Now when you give this username and password, it goes to the router, and then router do what? It will send that information to the Radius server for authentication. And now we get the access of the router. So authentication is done on the Radius server, and then we get the access of the router. So in our router is not doing the authentication, it is not verifying the username and password. It is verified by the Radius server. Same as the TACS server will also work the same way. I can use the other author login option also. We will check this in simulation mode. I'll show you this in simulation mode what happens. So first we'll go to simulation mode and try to do this. Try to telnet first. Now we are accessing it, we are trying, our machine is trying. So we can see here this telnet request is going to send to the router. So first this request is going to router now. Now it is replying. Remember this is TCP connection, telnet uses TCP, so they do the first acknowledgement. Now this is the telnet packet. Now the telnet package is, after establishing the connection, now telnet packet is coming. Now this is the telnet packet, and then our router will give the acknowledgement. Now because it is TCP, you see the acknowledgements are going on. So I'll just make it fast. These are STP packets which is coming from switch. These are DTP packets. Now we have this telnet packet coming from the router, and again TCP, again this. Now we are getting what? We are getting, okay, it is timeout. It was waiting for the username. Okay, we should have checked this. Okay, I will forward this. Okay, this telnet reply is coming, and it is actually asking for the password, username first. So it is asking the username. This router is asking the username. So I am giving user2 here. Now whatever I type here, it sends it separately for each packet. You see, it goes to 1, comes back, then again. So whatever the username I typed, it is coming like this. Each word is coming like the packets you see here. Each word which I typed. Now you see the U is come. Request, reply, acknowledgement, everything is happening here, and the username is completed. Now I will press enter here. Now my username is gone. Now I will receive the request for the password. Now when I check, okay, still it is showing username. Okay, now I'm getting the request for the password. So now I will provide password ABC and enter. Now see what happens. This is what I provide. It is the reply, and then this is what here. Now you see it has sent this telnet request to Radius server, and this is the Radius packet. Now Radius server will do authenticate, and it sends a reply that okay, you are allowing this, you can allow the user, and now it will send the packets of telnet to my client. And then when you see here, you will see the terminal here. Okay, still coming. So now acknowledge, reply, acknowledge, and still reply is coming. And here we have a terminal. When we go to simulation mode, it actually slows down the process. It actually very slows down the process. So now I have a terminal here. Now whatever I type, the packets will exchange within our server and router and this PC, and it keeps going like this. So it will take very time. So this is how this Radius server work. When you log in any of these client machine, the request will go to the router first. Router will give the reply and ask for the username and password, and it also inform the client that what type of authentication I want. It says that I am using the Radius authentication, and you have to provide the username and password, and you have to provide with this encryption and whatever, and then you will send the username and password here to the router. The router will send the information to this Radius server. Radius server will authenticate and give the reply to the router that whether this user is allowed or not, and then the router will allow or deny the connection. So this is what we configure the Radius server. If we want to configure the TACS server, we can just change this from here. We can just change it from here, but the other configurations are same. So this is the Radius server we have, and this is how we can configure this Radius server. Now next is SSH. We have used this telnet to connect the remote machine, the router, or even a switch, but telnet is not secure. If you use telnet, anyone can see your data. Anyone can see your data. That means whatever data whatever username, whatever password you are typing, they can see all. They can see everything if someone grabs the packet in between. So that is why telnet is not secure. So if we want to do the remote management, we can use SSH. It is called secure shell. How it do this? How it secures this? It secures it by the keys, public and private keys. So this SSH protocol is a management protocol that enables us to configure our devices securely in place of telnet. And this protocol uses the TCP port number 22. Telnet uses port number 23. SSH uses port number 22. And this is the secure one. And we can use SSH to accomplish these following things: connect the virtual terminal line on a router so as to configure other devices securely, connect remotely and securely to a terminal server so as to make a specific configuration changes, and connect to modem attached to router by dialing out securely, authenticate when making configuration changes by requiring passwords and username for each configuration line. So when you have a configuration where you have to provide passwords and all that, and even when you authenticate yourself, when you provide username and password, those things are not secure on telnet. So that means what, when you type or when you access the telnet, access the router with the telnet, so you saw your username and password packets. When you type username and password, it goes from this machine to the router. And if suppose someone grabs the packet from in between, hackers do this by using the man in the middle attack. Man in the middle attack, that means man in between this client and the router. So they can do this, they can use man in the middle attack to get the packets. When they get these packets, these telnet packets are not secure, they are plain text. So they can see whatever you're typing, even your username and password, they can see all. And not only the username and password, whatever you type on the command prompt, they can see all those commands and everything. Now in place of this telnet, we can use the SSH. SSH do what? It uses the public and private key. So this, suppose I'm giving router, I'm configuring this router for the SSH connection. So what, this router will generate two keys, public and private. It will keep the private key for itself and send the public key to the client. So when the client connects from here, it will encrypt all the data with that public key, and the data reaches to the router. So router will decrypt the data by using the private key. Now in between, when anyone try to do the man in the middle attack and try to get the packet, they will not see anything, they will see only encrypted data. And by doing this, SSH will do the secure connection and it will secure your connection. Now if we want to configure the SSH on virtual terminal line on router or switches, so first, to enable the SSH on router or switch, we must configure the following parameters. First, we need to configure the host name on the router, and then we have to configure the domain name. This is we required because the key which we generate, the public and private key pair, that will be generated by the based on the host name dot domain name. Then we have to generate the asymmetrical keys. Asymmetrical keys is actually called public and private key. Symmetrical keys like which we have used in radius server, that type of key we can say it is a symmetric key. Symmetric key, that means the same key we configured on the router and the same key we configured on the radius server. Both are same keys. That means like we have configured the password as a key. Now asymmetrical key means on the router we use different key and client will use the different key. It is public and private key. So first we have to generate those keys also. Then we have to configure our router to get the local authentication. Now we can also configure the following optional configuration parameters, that is timeouts and retries. Timeouts, that means when you connect the server router with the SSH, so how long you can get the connection, and if you don't do anything, if the connection will be on time ideal, then how much time after that connection will time out. It is for securing your terminal or router. Suppose you have logged in and then you're not doing something, you're not doing anything, you're doing something else, you forgot about it, so someone else can use your connection. So it will be timeout if you're not doing anything. Retries, that means if anyone tries to try to guess your password and try to log in with your username and password, so how much try they can do. These optional configurations also there which we can configure. So the first requirement is to configure the host name. Now we know how we can configure the host name. We can configure the command. We can configure the host name by using the hostname command. So first we will see how we can configure it. So this is what our network. Now first I will configure the IP address here on the interface and name of the router first. First I will configure the IP address on fast Ethernet 0/0 and IP address so that the other machines can connect. Now first requirement is to have a host name. So I will configure host name by using the hostname command. So I will configure this machine, this router name as a Psi1. So this is my host name for this router. Now after configuring the host name, next is to configure the domain name. For SSH to work, we need to have a domain name, and the command needed to configure the domain name is in the configuration mode IP domain name, and then you can use any domain name here. So we are going to configure the domain name also first. So I will go to the router where we have already configured the host name. Now I will configure the domain name. So for configuring the domain name, command is IP domain name, and then you can configure domain name. I will go with the pali.com. So this is my host name and domain name, and remember this host name and domain name will be used to generate the key. So the next step is to generate the key now. So next step is to generation of the asymmetric key. In SSH we need to create a set of encryption keys that will be used to encrypt the SSH traffic, and this is implemented in the global configuration mode by using this command crypto key generate for RSA. So when we use this command in a router, we are promoted to enter the size of the key within the range of 360 bits to 248 bits. So first, when you run this command, it will ask the key length. Now remember, the less key length we go, that is less secure. The more secure, when you go for more bits, it will get more secure. But when you go for more bit, that means your router need to be processed more. So it can make your router slow also. So it is depending on that how much your router can process. So first you will generate the key by using crypto key generate RSA command. So here I will give command crypto key generate RSA. Now when I press enter, it is asking me the key first, the length for the key. So we can give the number from 360 to 248 bit. And also you can see here it is saying the name for the key will be this. You can see the host name dot domain name. So if we have not configured this, the host name or the domain name, then it will give you error because the key name will be taken from the host name and domain name. So the key I will go for 1024 bit. I'm not going more, I'm not going less, I'm going for this 1024 bit. Now when you press enter, it says generating this key, and keys will be non-exportable, and it is okay done. Now the key is generated. Now the next step is to configure our line. So next step is to configure the line authentication. So the last compulsory configuration is of the local authentication, which is done by the configuring the username and a secret. This followed by the implementing the SSH protocol on the virtual terminal line. Now we can configure this username and password. Now remember, if we have devices, so we should not configure it for only one, like one user. So we have multiple level of users, and those users can access differently from the remote connection. Like we have top administrator, then we have second level administrator, third level administrator. So we should not give a same username and password for everyone and same privilege level to everyone. So what we do, we create different users with the different privileges and different passwords, so that when those users connect, they will get the privilege based on their level, and also they will get login by their own username and password. So for that we will run the command username for configuring the username, and the password we can use simple, or we can use the secret password. Secret password will be the secure password which no one can see. It will be hashed encrypted. Or if we use normal password, then anyone can see. So first we will configure the username and password, and also we can configure the privilege level. So I will go to router again. and I will configure here. And as you see, when I generate the key, it says SSH enabled, and this SSH has been enabled now. So as soon as you generate the key, the SSH will be enabled here. Now I will do what? I will configure username, and here you can give the name of the user. So let's say I am giving user1. Now when I give question mark, so we have option to give password. Now this specify the password for the user. Now this will be normal password, and the password which I give with this command can be seen by show run command. So when you run show running command, it will show the password. So if we want to use the secret password, then we can use secret command. And also we can set the privilege for the different users. Like if we have one user is the top administrator, then we have different administrators which does not have the more levels, more power, more privilege, then we can manage this by using this. Let's say I will create one user with the privilege of this. You see, you have a level from 0 to 15 privilege levels, so you can mention the levels from 0 to 15. Now different privilege level will get the different privilege. That means suppose the 15 is the, we will create one user as a privilege 0, and we will create one user as a privilege 15, and we can see the difference what they have. I will show you. I will create, okay, not privilege 0, I will create with the privilege 1, and then I can give a password as a secret, and I will give password ABC. So I created one user with the privilege of 1. Now I will create one more user, user 2, with the privilege of 15, and the password I will give secret. So I created two users with the different levels. Now after creating the users, next we have to configure the line. So next we will configure the line. Line means first we will go to the line VTY option command, and we'll get into the line mode. Then we will configure transport input SSH. That means whatever the transport for the access for the line control, like from the remote access. So whenever any request coming from this line VTY 0 to 4 for connecting, it will go for SSH. So all the input connection request it will process for SSH. Then next command is login local. It will use the username and password locally, which is configured on the router. Remember previously we used login for authentication, and we have used this as a Radius server. So previously we were using the Radius server for login, and in that Radius server we have configured the username and password. But here in this case I am going to configure it locally. So I have configured the username and password on local machine, local router, and I'm saying here that login local to use the authentication from the local router, and then we can exit from there. So I will go to line VTY 0 to 4. Then here I will configure transport input, whatever input connection request will come, send it to, remember you can send it to both. You can send it to SSH, you can send it to Telnet, you can send it to both, or you can send it to none. So if you want to use Telnet and SSH both, then you can use all, or if you want to use only Telnet, then you can use Telnet, or if you want to use only SSH, you can use SSH. But Telnet is not secure, so we will use SSH. Then I will say login, and I will say local. Local means local password checking. It will check local username and password. And if you want to use the AAA authentication, then you will use authentication, and which we have already used. So I'm going to use local this time, and this is also done. So this is what we have configured the SSH, and we have allowed the SSH access to two users, user 1 and user 2 we have created. Other configurations are optional configurations, like we can also specify the number of times that a person can try entering password as well as how long they would have to wait if they get it wrong. And this is optional, and it is implemented using the command like ipssh timeout, and then you can mention the time in seconds. Then ipssh authentication retries, you can mention it in integers like 1 2 3 whatever. And this is the command. Directly in global configuration mode we can type ipssh, and then we can go for the timeout and authentication retries. If you go for timeout, then you can mention the timeout between seconds from 1 to 120. Then if you want to configure authentication retries, then you can also configure from 0 to 5 numbers. So how much retries you want to allow or not allow. Let's say I want to allow only 2 long. Okay, so our SSH configuration is done now. Now we can see how we can access it. Now to test the remote terminal line connection from router, we can use the following command. From the router we can use SSH version verbosely 1 or 2, then list username and domain name. This command is to access it from the directly router terminal, like from one router to other router. But we will try it from the client machine. So I'll show you how we can do that, and it is same. So I'm going to access it from here. So I will go here in this machine first. So command is SSH, then -L for the login. I will show you when I press enter here. It shows that how you can log in. You can log in by using SSH command -L for login. Then you will mention the username, and then you will mention the target, that means the router. So SSH -L, username is user1, and the target is router 10.0.0.1. This is the router IP. So when I press enter, it is asking the password for this user, which is stored, we have configured on the router ABC, and we get the access. Now remember, what is the privilege level we have given? We have given the privilege level for user 1 is 0, and what it logins to this user terminal. Now user terminal, that means it is logged into directly user terminal, and even when you give a question mark here, it can run these commands. Now on the other machine, I will log in as a user 2 here. Remember, we gave the privilege to user 2 as a 15. So SSH-L user 2 for this router, password ABC. Now you see this user directly logs into the privilege mode because it has a privilege level of 15, that is top level. So 0 means less and 15 means top level privilege. Now when it logs in directly the privilege mode, then here from here it does not have any password from here. Remember, it does not have to have any password because it is directly on privilege mode. From here it can go to config mode and it can do any configuration. But the user which is having 0 privilege, if it is logged in, and you see it logs into directly user mode, and if it wants to do any configuration, then it has to go first in privilege mode, and for that it has to provide the password for the privilege mode. Otherwise it will not able to go to privilege mode. So this user is having the less privilege, other user 2 is having more privilege, and we can define those privilege by using those levels of privilege. And remember, it also differentiate between the commands. So level 0 may not have some commands, level 1 may have some commands, level 15 will have all the commands and everything, and it will log in directly to the terminal. And now you can go to router also. To check show sessions or show users, to check which users are logged in from where. And you can see this user is logged in from here console, so we are logged in directly from console. Then there is another one which is logged in, user 1, which is logged in, it is ideal, from VTY 0, and then other user 2 is logged in from VTY 1. So we can see this also, and for that you can run show user command from the router. This show session command shows the session which this router is executed. Like if from this router, if I access another router or another switch by using telnet or SSH, so I can see those session by here by using the show session command. Now, right now this router is not accessing any other device, so there is no session is there. So this is how we can configure the SSH. So this is how we can configure the SSH, and we can use this to connect from remote machine, and SSH is secure. Now the other thing is port security. Anyone can access unsecure network resource by simply plugging his host into one of our available switch port. A user can also change his physical location in LAN network without telling the admin. And you can secure layer 2 access as well as keep user in their track by using port security. Thus, port security features enhance the LAN security, and port security feature will not work in 3 types of ports. That is trunk ports, ether channel ports, and switch port analyzer port. Switch port analyzer port is the port which administrator use to analyze the network traffic. So administrator do configure one of the port as a switch port analyzer, and they get all the traffic on that port so that they can monitor the traffic. Trunk port, we know trunk port means when we configure 2 switches, we connect 2 switches and we want to do the intra VLAN communication, then we will configure the trunk port between those 2 switches. Ether channel port, which we configure to combine multiple ports together to have a more bandwidth between 2 different switches. So on these type of switches, port security will not work, but for the normal access ports, we can have the port security. So what this port security do, it will secure the port by using these from these users who sometime do what, change the port from, like it is connecting from here, then he moves from the other way, and then from trying to connect from the other side, and sometime they try to use some attacking tools also. So we can secure our network device by use from these MAC address flooding attack and trying to spoof attack. Spoof, that means try to impersonate, like it will try to change the MAC address of its device and try to connect your machine using the different device MAC address. So we can secure these things by using this port security. And remember, this can only work on these access ports. So how to enable the port security? So port security is disabled by default, so port security command enables it. So it will work only on access port. So first you will make the port access. So first command you see when you go to the interface first, and then first command you will see, you will run is switch port mode access. Then you will enable the port security by using the port security command. Now only enabling the port security will not help. So only enabling the port security will not help. After that you have to define the limit of maximum number of hosts. Now what that means? According to our requirement, we can limit the host that can be associated with an interface, and we can set this limit anywhere from 1 to 132. Maximum number of devices that can be associated with the interface is 132. By default it is set to 1. Switch port security maximum value command will set to maximum number of hosts with this command. Now why we do this? Why we limit the port numbers? By default, you know, when we connect any device to our switches. So what that switch do, it dynamically update the MAC address of that switch, that device on that port, and it can dynamically update multiple MAC addresses on the same port. I will show you the example first. Now in this design, what I did, I have 3 machines here. I connect those machines in this hub. Now hub do what? It will do the broadcast. So if any of these machines do any communication, their communication will go to switch also, and switch connected this hub with this fast Ethernet 0/1 port. Now what happened? All these 3 MAC address of these 3 devices will be updated only on this single port, that is 0/1. And there is one more device, it is connected on to other port 0/2. So here we will have only one port updated, but here in this port we will get all these 3 MAC addresses updated together. So basically what it do, it can update multiple MAC addresses into single interface. Let first show you this how it works. So I will try to ping it from this machine to other machine. So I will try to ping it. I will try to ping from this machine to this machine. So the IP for that machine is 4. Now I am getting the reply, and remember, when I getting the reply, the MAC address is updated here in the switch, and we can see that in the switch MAC address table. Okay, I will update other machines also. 3, which is the other machine here in this side, which is connected to hub. Then 2, and I will ping 1 also. 1 is itself. So this machine is 10.0.0.1, 10.0.0.2, 10.0.0.3 and 10.0.0.4. Now IP switch don't know, hub is also don't know. Now when I check the MAC address table on the switch, so what you will see here, show MAC address table. So you see here it is reading the MAC address table dynamically, and you can see here on this port number 1 0/1 we have 2 MAC address, and this is the third one we have. So all those 3 machines MAC addresses are updated on the single port, but in this port we have only 1, but it is also dynamic, so it can also update multiple MAC addresses. Now how many MAC addresses it can update? It depends on the memory also. It depends on the memory of our CAM table. So what hackers do, they do what? They use some kind of tool to do MAC address flooding. So from the single machine, they use a tool to generate the fake packets of source and destination MAC addresses. When these packets goes to the switch, whether it is entering from the single port, all the MAC addresses will be updated on the single port, thousands of MAC addresses, and it will fill all the CAM table memory. When the CAM table memory is full, then no other MAC addresses will be updated. Now when this happens, then what happens then? Whatever the data comes, switch will do what? Broadcast. Switch will start doing the broadcast because it does not have any information about any MAC addresses, because its CAM table is filled with fake MAC addresses. So what it do? It will start broadcasting every data, and when it do broadcast, so the data will go to everyone, and the attacker do what? It will sniff the data, and this attack they use to do the man in the middle attack, and also to do corrupt the switches, to do the redirections. Now to save these kind of attacks, what we can do? We can use the port security, and we can do what? We can limit the port MAC address updating. So we can do what? Not only we enable the port security, we enable the port limit also. We enable the limits also. We can enable the limit, like we can go for 1 to 132. We can have any limits. For example, like suppose I am allowing the port to connect, like somebody has having our users like having PC, they are having laptop, they can have other devices also they want to connect. So I will allow them to have 1, 2, 3 different MAC addresses to update. but only those 1, 2, 3, they will not have to allow, they will not be allowed to add more than that. So it will secure our device by the MAC address flooding attack also. So when any hacker try to flood with the MAC addresses, different fake MAC addresses, so first 3 will be updated, and then suppose I give the limit 3, so only first 3 will be updated, and then rest of the MAC addresses will be waste. It will not be updated, and our device will be secure, and our network will be secure. So this limit is also important. So not only we enable the port security, we have to limit it also. Now after limiting, suppose somebody try to attack, then what? Then we have to define the violation also. So if we set the limit of 3, so what? If we set the limit of 3, and if somebody tries to update more than 3, so what? We have to configure the violation also. So violation means what? We need to specify what action it should take in security violation, and these possible modes are available, like protect. So in this mode will only work with the sticky option. Now what is sticky option? Sticky option is this. So this is also one more option we can use for the security, like instead of dynamically updating the MAC addresses, we can manually update the MAC address. We can manually configure the MAC addresses of the devices. So instead of dynamically updating any MAC address, we can allow only the trusted MAC addresses, and we can manually configure the MAC addresses. So when we configure manually MAC addresses, we have two options. We can configure it manually by typing the MAC address, or we can use this sticky command. Sticky command will automatically stick the first MAC address. For example, suppose I set the limit of 2. So after that limit, I will configure the MAC address sticky. So sticky means first 2 MAC addresses will come, and those MAC addresses will be stick as a static, not a dynamic. So in this case, I don't have to go to the end device and to get the MAC address. I don't have to manually type the MAC address. It will be automatically read it, but it will remain static. So it will also do, we can do also this, and this, when we set the violation protect, it will work with only sticky option. So if we set sticky, then the protect will work. And this mode do what? It frames from non-allowed address would be dropped. So suppose I set 2 MAC addresses, valid, limit, and I set sticky also. So first 2 MAC addresses are stick, they added. Now when the third comes, and when the third MAC address device try to send the data, then all the data will be dropped. The switch will not process those data, and it will not make log entry for dropped frames, and interface will learn address until it reaches the maximum allowed number, and any additionally learned addresses would be dropped while keeping interface operational. So the interface will keep working, the exceeded MAC address data will drop, and here it will not make any log entries. Log entries, that means you will not log that who sends the packets and it is coming from where and how much packets are came. So it will not do all those things. It will just keep running, the port will keep run, and it will just drop the packets which is coming from untrusted MAC address or unallowed MAC addresses. Now the other mode for the violation is what? Restrict. In this restrict mode, frames from non-allowed addresses would be dropped, the same as protect, but in this mode switch will make the log entries and generate the security violation alert. So in this mode it will log the entries also, that who is trying to access these, trying to send the data which is not allowed, and also it will generate the alert. Now the third option for the violation is directly shut down, and in this mode switch will generate the violation alert and disable the port, and only way to re-enable the port is to manually enter no shutdown command, and this is default violation mode. This is the default violation mode, and it will shut down the port directly. Suppose I put the limit for 2 MAC addresses, when the third comes, port will get down, and it will not get enabled until we give the command no shutdown manually, and also we have to reboot the system. and we can set this by using this command. So how we can set this? We have a design here. So as this design, what happening here, all these three MAC addresses are updating on the same port number fast Ethernet 0/1 of this switch. So what I will do here, I will put the security, port security on this port, and what I will allow only two ports. I will allow only two MAC addresses. So what happens if more than two MAC addresses try to go from here, from the switch, they will not be allowed. So let's do this. So I'll go to this switch now, and I will go to that interface fast Ethernet 0/1. So first, switch port mode access, because it will work only on access mode. It will only for the access port. It is not for the trunk port and the either channel ports. So I will change this into normal access port. Now I will give command switch port security. This command will enable the port security on this port. Now after enabling this port security, it is not only if you enable it only, then it will go for default things. Now I have to set the limit. So I will go for maximum option. Now here I can go up to 132. So I will go for 2 here. As our design we have 3 devices, I'm going to allow only 2, and we will see what happens. Now after this I will go for port security, and I will go for MAC address. Now here we can add MAC address manually by typing the 48-bit MAC address manually. We can add one by one whatever MAC addresses we want to update here or add here statically. But to get the MAC addresses, we have to access the machines, and then we have to get the MAC addresses from there. Then we have to type here manually 1, 2, 3. Now instead of doing that, we can use what Sticky. It will do what? It will update the MAC addresses which comes first, and it will add it as a static. It will not add it as a dynamic. It will read it dynamically, but it will add it as a static. So I will go for Sticky. Now I have set the port security limit. Now what happen if somebody violate this? So violation. Now here we have these 3 modes: protect, restrict, and shutdown. Shutdown is the default. So I will go for restrict here, or I will go for protect, and enter. So this is what I configured on this port number fast Ethernet 0/1. Now see what happens. Right now when you see show MAC address table, so the table is now empty because we have configured now. Now see what happens. Now first I will try to ping from this machine to this. This is 10.4. So I will try to ping it from this first machine. 10.4, and I'm getting the reply. I'm getting the reply from this machine. Now this machine's MAC address is updated now. So when you check the switch here, and when you check ports switch show MAC address table, now you can see one MAC address is statically updated on fast Ethernet port 0/1, and this is the other switch, other PC is connected here in this port. Now I will try to ping it from here. Again I will try to ping the same this machine. Ping 10.0.0.4. Again I am getting the reply. Remember, port is not going to be shut down. So I am getting the reply. Now when you check the switch MAC address table, now you see 2 MAC addresses are statically updated, and our limit is 2. Now third one will not update here. So now I will go here in the third machine, and from here I will try to ping again this machine, and to ping this machine it has to go through the switch. Remember, from this machine to this machine it has to go through the switch, but remember we have set the port security, so the data will not go there. Now it is not getting reply because we have protecting the port and we have said only 2 MAC addresses are allowed. Third one is not allowed, so now it is not able to ping. It is not getting any reply. Lost, timeout. So it is not getting any reply from that machine because to ping that machine it has to go through the switch and switch is protecting it. Remember, port is not shutting down because I have set it to protect. Now if it try to ping these 2 other machines which is connected with the hub, it can ping. It can still ping, but when it wants to go through the switch, then it will not able to go because switch is now protecting it. And if you see the port here in MAC address table, you can see only 2 ports are updated. Third MAC address is not updating. And also you can check port security. You can verify the port security by using show port security command, or you can show port security addresses to display the statically, dynamically, or learned addresses with the port security. We can display the port security information about the specific interface. We can go to the port security interface and that interface name to see that interface. And if we want to reset the interface that is disabled due to violation of port security, we set the shutdown command violation, so it will do shutdown, and we want to reset it, then we can go and shut down and no shutdown command. So we shut down the port and we do enable the port, disable and enable the port by using no shutdown command, then it will be enabled. Show port security. So we have enabled only this. On this port we have count 2, maximum secure address, current address, security violation and security action. Now remember, it is not logging any option, it is not saying any violation because there is violation, but it's still not saying because we have set port protect. If we set request restrict, then it will count it. It will count how much violation has done. And this saying port addresses. Now it is showing those MAC addresses which is read by the sticky command. So this is what port security, and this is how we can configure the port security. So these are some information about network security, what are the threats and problems we have and how we can solve these problems somehow.